Welcome to the screencast overview of the immune system. This is one of my favorite chapters in all of A&P because it's just so amazing what our bodies are capable of and how specific individual little cells can be. Normally I suggest that you read before watching the videos. However, with this system, I'm going to suggest that you watch the screencast before completing the reading. The reason for this is I've found that the immune system is sometimes a little more abstract for students, and there are a couple of reasons for that, I think. The first is that all of the components of this system are microscopic. They are not something that you can hold in your hand like a heart or a brain. The second is that there are many different components to this system that all work in unison to keep our bodies healthy, and I think sometimes students get overwhelmed with simply the organization of it all. For that reason, I've developed an organizational chart, which I hope will help to simplify this a bit. If you are feeling overwhelmed or trying to understand where something you are studying fits into the big picture, please refer back to this chart or get in contact with me. The first thing that you'll notice is that the immune system has two branches. The innate, which includes everything in green, and the adaptive, which includes everything in blue. These two branches are separate from each other, but work together to defend us from pathogens. Probably the more simple of the two is the innate branch. It is called innate because we are born with it fully functioning. All of the different parts of this system work from the moment we are born to defend us from disease. It is sometimes also referred to as the non-specific branch because the different components of the innate system cannot recognize one microorganism from another. For example, it can't tell herpes virus from chickenpox virus from plague bacterium. It just sees these things basically as self or non-self and destroys those things that are non-self without necessarily knowing exactly what they are. Again, all of the parts of the innate branch I have represented in this diagram in green. So what I'd like to do now is walk you through this diagram and give you a little bit more information about each component. The first thing that I've got listed under the innate branch are external membranes. These are things like the skin and mucous membranes. If you think about skin, it's a really good barrier to infection. It's slightly acidic, it's dry, and it's made up of multiple layers of cells that are tightly bound together, which creates a barrier to entry in the body. In addition, it produces antimicrobial chemicals, making skin a really inhospitable place for most pathogens to be. Skin really is the first line of defense for our bodies. For something to make us sick, it has to cross or breach the skin and get into body tissues. We all encounter probably hundreds of potentially harmful microorganisms every day, but as long as they stay on the skin surface and don't get inside our tissues, most of them cannot cause us any harm. This is, however, why hand washing and hygiene are so important, so that we don't inadvertently introduce microorganisms on the skin deeper into the body by putting fingers in our mouth, rubbing our eyes, or getting a cut or a scrape that breaks the skin surface. Another body part that would be classified under external body membranes are mucous membranes. These are tissues that line body cavities that open to the outside, such as the nasal cavity, oral cavity, vagina, or anus. Mucous membranes produce mucus, which is sticky and can trap microorganisms, preventing them from moving from the outside of the body to the inside across the mucous membrane. In that way, they help to prevent infection and are another part of that first line of defense. They prevent a harmful substance from being able to enter the body in the first place. If a microorganism does happen to breach the skin or mucous membranes and get into body tissues, it will next encounter a whole host of body defenses that act as the second line of defense. We're going to focus still for a bit on the defenses inside the body that are a part of the innate system. These include certain immune system cells that we'll talk about, and also includes different chemicals and proteins that the body will actually produce in response to microorganisms being found inside of the body itself. The first of the cells are phagocytic cells. These are things such as macrophages and a few other cell types that you'll read about in the book. These cells are capable of destroying microorganisms that enter to the body basically through a process in which they ingest them and then actually work to break them down inside the cell itself. Natural killer cells are cells with a super cool name. that also are capable of destroying microorganisms through a process that you'll read about in the book. Both of these cell types are detailed in the text, and the detailing, the reading on them is pretty simple. So rather than focusing precious class time on them, I'll let you learn more about them through your reading. The innate system also consists of several different types of chemicals and proteins that can be activated or produced by the body in response to microbial invasion. These include a chemical which is called interferon, which is produced specifically in response to viral infection, and a whole bunch of proteins that are found in the blood that collectively make up what is known as the complement system, which becomes active specifically in response to bacterial infection. The process through which interferon is produced and complement becomes activated is a little more in depth, and it's where I've found students typically struggle with the innate system. For that reason, complement and interferon will be the focus of our first in-class activity on immunity. Please read about them actively in your text, develop some understanding of these processes, and then come to class ready to work out the details in a case study on these two parts of the innate system. In addition, two other chemicals are produced by the innate system in response to invasion of microorganisms. If you break down the word pyrogen, it means basically a fire-generating substance. So pyrogens are chemicals in the body that cause fever. Fever is actually an adaptive response of the body that helps us to fight off infection. For that reason, fevers that are mild to moderate, around 102 degrees Fahrenheit and below, are actually helpful to healing. High fevers can be damaging to proteins, primarily in the brain, and so we will often try to decrease a high fever. The text covers some information on pyrogens, and it isn't too complicated, so again, please use your text as the primary source to learn more about these chemicals. The last chemical produced as part of the innate system is a chemical called histamine. This chemical, when released in the body, causes inflammation, which is actually a necessary step in the healing process. There are sometimes reasons that we try to limit inflammation, probably the primary one being that it hurts, but in reality, it is a part of the healing process, and in fact, without it, we wouldn't be able to get healing of damaged tissues. If you'd like more information about situations where it might be helpful or necessary to limit inflammation, please ask me in class. The text provides a good description of the inflammatory process, which is relatively simple, so I will direct you to the text for primary learning on that topic, with of course the direction that you are always welcome to ask me follow-up questions on any material in the text when we are in class. So now that we've worked out the details a bit, let's review the innate system. It's known as the innate system because all of these things, the external membranes, the cells, the chemicals and proteins, are present and functioning from the time of birth to keep us healthy. It's also sometimes known as the nonspecific system because it isn't able to recognize one microorganism from another. For example, if you think about skin, it just keeps things that are outside the body out. It doesn't recognize or know if something sitting on its surface is a bacterium, a virus, a fungus, etc., and it doesn't need to. It just collectively keeps all of those things out. Phagocytes will eat and digest anything they determine to be foreign. They don't have to know the specific virus or bacterium that they are dealing with to do this. Same thing with the natural killer cells. If they encounter something in the body that doesn't look like a part of you, it's determined to be foreign, and a natural killer cell will destroy it without stopping to ask questions or wondering what it might be. The chemicals and proteins of the innate system work in much the same way. They are produced or activated when something foreign, doesn't matter what exactly, enters the body. I did mention that interferon is specific for viruses. However, it is released in response to a wide range of viruses. It can't differentiate one virus from another. In the same way, complement is activated against a wide range of bacteria and can't recognize one bacterium from another. Again, this is why we also sometimes call this branch of the immune system the nonspecific branch. I've created a second screencast that overviews the adaptive branch of the immune system so that you will be able to watch it before we cover that branch in class. To keep things as streamlined and simplified as possible, we'll just worry about the innate system for now. So this concludes the overview screencast on innate immunity.